We got a classic to talk about today, everybody. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to The Haunted Beard. My name is Jake. Thank you for joining me. Well, I decided it was time to kick off a brand new franchise series of reviews, and I wanted to talk about George A. Romero's zombie movies. And so that's what I'm going to do. I felt like these are some films that aren't talked about very much, and I have not seen any of these, if you can believe it. So all of these are going to be first-time watches for me. So I'm very excited to get into this new series of reviews. Now, in addition to Romero's films, he has 6 of his zombie films. I'm also going to review a couple of the remakes as well. So what this series is going to look like is this. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the original from 1968, Night of the Living Dead. Then I'm going to be reviewing Dawn of the Dead from 1978, followed by Day of the Dead from 1985. I'm going to review Night of the Living Dead 1990, the film, the remake directed by Tom Savini. I'm also going to review Dawn of the Dead from 2004, Zack Snyder's remake. And then I'm going to finish it up with Romero's final 3 zombie films, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, and Survival of the Dead. So that's what this series is going to look like. Like I said, these are all going to be first-time watches for me. I'm very excited. 8 movies in total, and then when I'm done reviewing these, I'll cap it off with an official ranking video. So, without further ado, though, let's get into the original, the zombie classic from 1968, George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Let's talk about it. In Night of the Living Dead, a ragtag group of Pennsylvanians barricade themselves in an old farmhouse to remain safe from a horde of flesh-eating ghouls that are ravaging the northeast of the United States. Now, this film is sometimes attributed with being the very first zombie film, and based on my research, it isn't technically the first zombie film. That belongs to the film White Zombie, starring Bela Lugosi from 1932. However, this is the very first film that implemented or presented zombies in the way that we kind of know and love them today. It was the first film to really kind of give us that sort of reanimated corpse style. It introduced us to the flesh-eating zombies and also the zombies that you could only kill by shooting them in the head. So this is a film that set up a lot of what we are familiar with and what we know and love zombies to be in horror movies today.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder.
And as somebody who loves horror movies, it's always cool, and I feel like important, to go back into horror history to watch some of these films that were so influential and so meaningful. And this is a great example of that, as this really paved the way for the zombie film. So being able to go back and see the origins of something and then see how that thing has now influenced so many films that have come after it, including films today, over 50 years later, is always something that is pretty cool to see. Now, this is a film that sometimes it's difficult when going back to older films, especially watching them decades and decades later. You know, there's always a bit of reservation with regards to how is it going to hold up? You know, is it still going to have as much impact? And it's tough because we're so far removed from this movie now, and so many films have been birthed out of this movie and have been made since then, that to go back with these, 2024 lenses on to watch something from 1968, right? You're just not going to totally get the full impact of it. And oftentimes when going back to classic films, they are typically films that I can kind of more appreciate and admire and respect as a piece of history, and being able to, look back into the past sort of thing. They're kind of more so films like that than films that I necessarily fully enjoy or get a whole lot of entertainment out of. And this is one of those cases. I would say I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I more so kind of admire and appreciate what this film gave birth to, more so than I actually enjoyed or was entertained by the film. And I will give it some credit, though. I think there are some sequences that still hold up quite well. And this is a film that First of all, it being over 50 years old, right? It's hard enough for a movie that's over 50 years old to continually hold up as well today. But in addition to that, this was an extremely low budget film with pretty much all like non-professional actors, had, very limited budget and limited production qualities as well. But really what it has is the idea, and it's got the brilliant idea and mind of George A. Romero working within it, and him introducing us to these types of creatures and zombies that, again, we know and love today. And so it's the idea and the concept here that make this film stand out and make it really a zombie classic that it is today. And that idea is just priceless. And it's a great idea. And it's one of those films, there's so many horror movies that were released before I ever came around that I wish so badly I could like go back in time and watch in its initial theatrical run and watch it with the people when it originally came out, just to really get the full impact of it. Funnily enough, when I was doing some of my research on this film, I discovered that this film was released in theaters right before the official MPAA rating system came out. And so this was a film that children were allowed to go to the theater and see. And I read this brief little story of Roger Ebert being in the theater looking across the aisle at this younger girl, and her being absolutely terrified to the point of tears while she was watching this film, which I can't help it. That kind of makes me laugh a little bit. But it's one of those films I wish I could have gone back and seen it in 1968 when it came out, because I can imagine this thing probably freaked some people out. Now, there are some criticisms I could make with the film from a technical standpoint, but I almost feel like some of that isn't even fair. Again, this is a movie that's over 50 years old. That was an extremely low budget film. And so really just that concept and the idea is what makes this thing so memorable and impactful. And like I said, there is still some stuff in here that actually holds up quite well. I do like the black and white here. I'm typically a fan of black and white cinematography. There's something about it that it's kind of hard to explain. I just like the stark contrast. I just like the black and white. It just feels distinct and memorable. I think it works here with this kind of, creepy, eerie sort of story with these, zombie flesh eaters type thing. I like some of the cinematography and the shot selection here. Romero, I noticed, often does these kind of low angle, canted angle shots where, he's way below the character and the, camera's kind of tilted. It kind of gives the film a very unfamiliar, kind of uncomfortable look and feel to it. That I think works pretty well and definitely suits the film. I liked the old school soundtrack here, which I guess when this came out, it wasn't old school at all, but just seeing the differences in the sound from a movie like this compared to what a more modern film would have used, just a full orchestra, a very intense, over the top, loud, very theatrical type orchestral score to it. That I think works. It's interesting to see how some of the kind of jump scares, if you were implemented back then. But I liked the music here. I like that old kind of classic type vibe and feel to it that the music brought out in the film. So I really enjoyed that. I think the lead performance by Dwayne Jones, who plays Ben, I think he does a pretty good job. Again, for this being an entirely non-professional cast, I think him as the lead, he does a pretty good job. Yeah, there are some spots where the acting is a bit rough. There are some moments where the film feels a bit slow and a bit thin on story, but it does a good job, especially as it kind of builds more towards the climax in the last 20 to 30 minutes or so, really just kind of helping you feel that impending sense of doom, that overall kind of atmosphere of dread and fear and things like that. I think the film does a pretty good job kind of giving off those sort of vibes. And I quite enjoyed kind of the build-up and the climax of the movie. Once Ben and Tom decide to leave the house to try to go get gas to put in the truck, that final sort of climactic sequence plays out quite well. You get some pretty gnarly zombie gore and stuff like that. They're eating people and you got organs and intestines out and stuff like that. it works. It's fun. I had a smile on my face. I liked it. I was appreciating it. It's pretty good stuff. I also really like the scene where they find out that the young daughter had been bitten by one of the zombies, and she turns into a zombie. And the mother goes downstairs to check on her to find out that she had gnawed her dad's arm off because he died. And then she attacks the mom with the trowel. And you got that pretty intense bloody scene with her stabbing her mom with the trowel. And so there are some moments here that I think hold up pretty well, and they really work. And I also thought the ending of the film was brutal. I did not expect it to end that way. I didn't really know how it was going to end, but it definitely leaves some impact. I think there's even some commentary that you could read into it, maybe even some unintentional commentary, as I read that how the film has kind of been interpreted regarding the ending wasn't even necessarily intentional, but certainly you can still kind of get some commentary out of it that, rings true. But anyways, yeah, it's a downbeat of an ending, but it's a horror film. What do you expect, kind of thing. This is one that, if you like going back into horror history, and it's cool when you're able to kind of go back and almost sort of pinpoint the origin of a specific genre, kind of thing. And that's kind of the case here with Night of the Living Dead. It's cool when you're able to do that and see this movie as a piece of horror history. So it's a film that I would recommend if you have any interest in horror history and stuff like that. I think you'll appreciate it. So had a pretty good time with this one. There's definitely some stuff here to appreciate, and thank God for George Romero and this insane, crazy idea that he had and what he was able to do, and then just the onslaught of zombie films that we've now had over the last 50 plus years because of this movie. So it's one of those films that's like the concept and the idea of it is the gift that just keeps on giving even all these years later, and that's pretty cool. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Hit me up down below. Let me know your thoughts on this one. Would very much love to hear from you. So up next is, what is it? Dawn of the Dead, I think. Let me check my list again here. I can't keep them all. They all kind of run together. They're all just of the dead, something of the dead. But yeah, Dawn of the Dead. 1978 is coming up next. Like I said, it's going to be a first-time watch for me. Very excited, looking forward to it. So thank you for watching. That's all I got. If you got anything out of this, go ahead and do me a favor and do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard.